At the inaugural Public Wealth Management Conference, the Ministry of Finance Incorporated, MOFI, has announced the launch of a groundbreaking 100 billion naira project preparation fund aimed at catalyzing investments across Nigeria. Arise News correspondent Nkechi Nana has more details.
In the heart of Nigeria's bustling capital, Abuja, the Public Wealth Management Conference unfolds as a testament to economic transformation. Distinguished guests from government and industry converge, all with one mission: championing Nigeria's economic prosperity. At the center of attention stands the Ministry of Finance Incorporated, MOFI, with its Managing Director, Mr. Armstrong Takang, unveiling MOFI's latest endeavor.
We are the shareholder representing the commercial interests of government. And as such, we have held to ensure that all the assets that are under our management deliver commercial returns. We are going to be launching 100 billion naira project preparation fund. What is the basis of that? Every time you hear us travel abroad that we're going to seek for investment, investments go to bankable projects. Bankable projects require funding. You cannot create a pipeline of bankable projects without financing that option work.
As anticipation fills the conference hall, Vice President Kashim Shettima highlights commitment to Nigeria's economic resurgence.
The mandate and restructuring of the Ministry of Finance Incorporated, MOFI, represents a new chapter focused on harnessing our public wealth more strategically for growth and optimization. MOFI's role as custodian and active manager of the investments of the federal government now places it at the epicenter of our economic development agenda.
The Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of Economy emphasizes key areas for MOFI's focus.
You have to enumerate the government's assets. We have to know how much we own, what we own, whose hands it's in, and how you're going to get it on board for yourself. You must optimize asset performance. You must unlock the untapped potential.
MOFI's chief outlines a roadmap for leveraging public assets, emphasizing efficiency, transparency, and accountability. Also, there's an unveiling of a bold 10-year plan aimed at unlocking Nigeria's public assets and its potential. As the trusted custodian and shareholder of Nigeria's investment assets, MOFI plays a pivotal role in managing and optimizing these assets. The Public Wealth Management Conference provides a platform for MOFI to showcase its approaches to deliver value for the country. Nkechi Nana, Arise News.
Joining us now on the show is Dr. Armstrong Takang, Managing Director, Ministry of Finance Incorporated, MOFI. Good morning, Mr. Armstrong, and thanks for joining us on the morning show.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's great to be on the show.
Well, Dr. Takang, thank you for joining us. Well, yesterday you had a major conference on public wealth management, where a number of issues were raised about Nigerian assets to be managed by Ministry of Finance Incorporated for the benefit of Nigerians. MOFI has been there since 1959 for the benefit of our viewers. Can you tell us about your renewed mandate now that there is a board in place, and also, some of the principal outcomes of yesterday's conference on public wealth? Something that all of us are concerned about. Nigerians say, they're managing our money. Just take us through, by way of introduction, that conference and your renewed mandate at MOFI.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Bati. It's good to be with you and the team. So I think it is important to create some context, and I'm really glad that you've made some comments concerning that. So as you know, MOFI was established initially in 1959 in recognition of the need to separate the policy role of government, the regulatory role of government, and government's involvement in commercial enterprises. So MOFI at that time in 1959 was established to hold the interests of federal government of Nigeria in commercial enterprises. It was against that background that the shares of federal government in commercial entities such as NITEL, defunct NITEL, NEPA, Nigerian Airways, Bank of Industry, and many of the other ones that are in existence today, including NNPC Limited, Bank of Industry, Bank of Agriculture, the power companies are held with MOFI. But until last year, MOFI existed as a non-operating entity. What it meant was that many of the investments we made were not made from a strategic standpoint. And we didn't have a framework and a governance structure that guided how they were managed, how they were monitored, to ensure that value was not only created, but it would be delivered to the benefit of Nigerians. Government made a critical decision last year, which is to restructure and reposition MOFI to become the trusted custodian and the active manager of federal government's holdings in investments, assets, as well as other resources. Part of that restructuring involved establishing a governing council. And that governing council is chaired by Mr. President, with the Vice President as the alternate chair, with the Honorable Minister of Finance and the Coordinating Minister of the Economy as the deputy chair. And this council has other members of the Federal Executive Council as members, as well as 3 Nigerians that are appointed by Mr. President. Underneath the governing council is the board of directors that is made up of 6 non-executive directors and 4 executive directors. And that board today is chaired by Dr. Shamsuddin Usman, the former Minister of Finance, former Minister of Planning, as well as a former Deputy Governor at the CBN. Then there is an executive management made up of 4 of us as executive directors, which I lead. That is the governance structure of the new MOFI. What is the mandate of the new MOFI? The mandate of the new MOFI is to ensure that every asset that federal government holds must deliver value to Nigeria and to Nigerians. And we need to make sure that that value is commercial in nature. So if there's anything that is not commercial, we would stay away from it. Because we believe that the value we create will contribute towards expanding the fiscal space so that government will have a lot more resources to deploy in other priority sectors of the economy. Now, why was it important for us to have this conference yesterday? First of all, when you are the trusted custodian of assets held by federal government of Nigeria, you're invariably responsible for commonwealth that belongs to over 220 million Nigerians. With that responsibility comes the need for transparency and accountability. And the event yesterday had as one of its objectives the need to render account to Nigerians, to tell Nigerians what the new MOFI is positioned to do for their benefit. We also had the chance to have 4 of our portfolio companies, amongst many others, to present to Nigerians, particularly the audience in that hall, what they have been up to, what their mandate is, what impact they have been making so far. We had NNPC Limited, and the GCO of NNPC was there to render account as to what they've been doing. We had the Nigerian Sovereign Wealth Investment Authority that the federal government owns about 45% of, also render account as to what they've been doing. We had Bank of Industry that is meant to drive industrialization, was also there to render accounts for that. That's also a MOFI portfolio company. And we also had the Family Homes Funds that was also there to render account for it. We strongly believe that a key success factor for our mandate is transparency and accountability. And that was one of the major reasons we had that conference yesterday, to render account to Nigerians.
That's brilliant, and that's great to hear. Now, let's talk about the 100 billion naira project preparation fund. Can you give us details in the spirit of accountability and transparency? What's that fund about? Where would it go to? And how would we measure in terms of impact?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Fantastic question. So let me give you a bit of context. You know, for many years, we clearly, as a nation, recognize the importance to ensure that we build our industries, to create jobs for our people, to invest in critical and priority sectors of the economy, such as agriculture, healthcare, education, infrastructure, technology. All of these areas, for us to do that, we need massive amount of investments, both from domestic investors as well as foreign investors. Now, for us to attract those investments, we need to have bankable projects because the money will flow to bankable projects. But the challenge that is in our environment, and when you speak to a lot of investors, they're going to tell you that most of the project ideas that are presented to them are not ready for investments. The documentation is not prepared in terms of the feasibility studies haven't been done. The environmental impact assessment has not been done. The business plans haven't been done. So when you're in that situation as an investor, it is difficult for you to even make an investment decision because first of all, you don't know what the scale of the investment is. You do not know what types of risk you're likely to face. You do not even know the implication of the environmental impact of that project. You do not even have the numbers to determine how much money do you need to invest in terms of whether it is how much for equity, how much for debt, what is the profitability, what is the return on your capital, what is the yield. All of these questions must have been answered before the investors can make a decision. And they will not finance that work. That is project development work. And investors typically will not finance that. They expect you as the project promoters to have invested in developing that work, the upstream work, to enable them to make an investment decision. And what we know, and many investors are telling us, is that that was a gap, and still is, in our market as far as attracting investment is concerned. And that was why the board of MOFI made a decision that we would set up this fund to finance that upstream work, to develop a pipeline of bankable projects which will in turn attract investment into the different sectors of the economy.
I mean, this is still in line with your vision, and it might be a long one for you. How can we make MOFI be like the Temasek of Singapore?
Fantastic. So I'm really glad that you made reference to that because the Temasek and MOFI have very similar history in terms of their origin. Because Temasek was also a Ministry of Finance Incorporated, were established in 1959 by the British. But in 1974, the Singaporeans made a decision to take their own MOFI away from the regular government structure and established it as an autonomous institution that focused on making investments with commercial returns, but using government resources, where government is a shareholder. MOFI, on the other hand, did not have the benefit of that structure and that direction of travel and has not achieved the same thing. Temasek today has assets under management of over almost $300 billion operating in over 11 countries around the world. And they started with just about $350 million. We believe that that is a model that we can benefit from. In order to do that, we need, first of all, we've already made a major step in ensuring that we have a governance structure that guides how MOFI operates, especially with the board of directors and an executive management that will make those investment decisions. That's the first thing. The second is really around ensuring that our investment assets are brought under one umbrella with a clear decision to ensure that these assets must be put to use. We need to sweat those assets so that they can deliver returns that are commensurate with the returns you would expect from a privately owned entity in that sector, providing the same service or producing the same goods. So that is the second part in terms of ensuring that we're focused on that. The third aspect of it is to ensure that the structures, the legislative framework empowers MOFI to make decisions that are commercial in nature, that would give yields that are market-oriented, so that the benefits of it in terms of capital appreciation as well as dividend payments will now flow to government, for government to spend in financing other government programs. So those are some of the key things that we believe will be helpful in ensuring that MOFI delivers on the mandate that it has been set for it, similar to what Temasek is delivering today.
Okay. It's good to hear your comments on Temasek, which was the recommendation of Tony Elumelu yesterday at the conference you had in Abuja, how, MOFI can learn from the example of Temasek. But let me ask you, when the board was inaugurated, there were issues.
Sure.
You've mentioned some of our assets. Now, what about those assets that are dead or the ones that have been misappropriated? Would you like to identify some of them? Do we even have a national register of assets? And then part of the objective of MOFI is to sell some of these assets to generate revenue for government, for governance. Now, when are you going to put some of these assets on sale? Take, for example, NNPCL. When are you going to sell the federal government's stake in NNPCL, for example, and have a public offer for people to buy shares? Those details. Is there a national register? Are you going to sell some of your assets? Which assets? How soon? Which are the dead assets that Nigerians have been talking about, or the ones that have been stolen?
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Abati. That is really at the heart of MOFI. So first of all, I think it is important to understand that today, if you ask almost every Nigerian, they will tell you how much we owe, but very few people can tell you how much we own, what we own, where they are located, and the value of it. And that is why at the heart of MOFI's mandate is to establish what we own through a national assets register. That work has already commenced, and we have a list of most of the corporate assets that government owns. We've also have an inventory of a lot of the concession assets. The good thing about the concession assets is two assets in one, because there is a base asset, whether it's a waterway, it is a bridge, it is an airport or a seaport. Then there's also the second class of asset, which is the concession rights that have been given. That is what generates the cash flows. And so that work is an ongoing work. It has started, we've made significant progress, but it is an ongoing piece of work because it would also include things such as our real estate assets, those that are located within Nigeria, across the 36 states of the Federation, plus FCT, and the real estate assets that are also located abroad will be part of that. Then you also look at things such as our financial assets that are also going to be included in that, our solid mineral assets, our oil and gas assets, especially the ones that have not yet been concessioned. The idea is to create a national assets register that gives us visibility over what we own, how much it is worth, and we can begin to use those assets to attract investments and to engage in other projects that will help us achieve some of the developmental goals that we want to achieve. Now, speaking on the issue of selling, let me make it very clear that at the end of the day, we need to make sure that by the time we even talk about selling an asset, we need to have established what it is worth, and we need to have added some value to it. So we are not selling it cheap. We don't want to sell any assets undervalued, because that would be depriving Nigerians of what rightly belongs to them. We need to make sure that before an asset is even put up for sale, we would have done work to prepare it, we would have optimized it so that when it's in the market, if we ever make that decision, then we are getting the best price possible for that asset. Otherwise, we'll be cheating everybody for that. So that is why, as part of our strategy, our second strategy is to ensure that we take steps to optimize the assets, the investment assets, as well as other assets that are under our custody that government owns, to add value to them, and at the appropriate time. And once a decision has been made that we need to either divest from that asset, it will be done in a transparent manner by the agencies that are responsible for undertaking that exercise. For instance, the Bureau for Public Enterprises that is responsible for privatization will be involved in that aspect, or commercialization, because they are the ones who have been empowered to take on that responsibility. They will work with them to ensure that is done. But I also have to say that that is not the only option that is available for an asset. There are also mergers and acquisition.
There's really nothing stopping us from taking a government asset and merging it with another entity that is strategically aligned with that to create a bigger pie, a bigger company that has more value for us to be able to optimize that. Because ultimately, we have a responsibility to ensure that we're optimizing assets and delivering more value to Nigerians. It's not just about selling the assets. It's about optimizing the assets for the benefit of everyone. And there are different opportunities and options available to us. And we will look at all of those for each of those assets.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Armstrong Takang, for joining us on the morning show. All Nigerians want is just a MOFI that is strong for the benefit of Nigerians.